All right, we are very excited to have you all join us today. I know it's a little rainy and cloudy, kind of sets the mood for Tyreek going to Miami, but we'll try to make everyone's rest of the week go a little better, hopefully after today's event. So, we're excited to be discussing workforce resources with you all today as it continues to be a high priority for our members. This is a first of an ongoing series of workshops through our workforce development initiative entitled Tapping Today's Talent, which is really designed to help address workforce needs with a greater awareness of workforce resources in the region. So today's program will focus on how businesses can successfully tap into the veteran talent pool. So the KC Chamber re-engaged this workforce development initiative in 2018 with the purpose of addressing the problem statement of a misalignment between business hiring needs, available talent, perception of the skilled trades and regional education systems, which result in limited agility in down economies and gaps in attraction and retention in strong economic times. These dynamics ebb and flow to impede business, economic growth, and the region's competitiveness in the global talent marketplace. This was most evident with the recent pandemic that we all just recently went through during the onset and the height of it. The underlying principles of the initiative focus on how as a collective business community, we can effectively attract and retain skilled talent. So the objectives of the initiative really focus on three main pillars. How can we connect, create, promote, and advocate? Through promotion and advocacy, we hope to do exactly what we're doing today with the Tapping Today's Talent series, which is to help establish connections between the workforce ecosystem stakeholders, as well as improve collaboration with institutions of higher education and identify gaps and barriers to workforce development and advocate for policy changes that address talent needs. The initiative also seeks to create through the exploration of the creation of a non-traditional recruiting consortium of the skilled trades to connect underserved populations, establishing and marketing real-world learning experience for K through 12, and improving regional access employer hiring through accessible job postings and application submissions. And finally, we seek to connect through our workforce program. We try to engage in this work through regular communication between business and education at all levels to develop a shared understanding of the evolving workforce needs, opportunities and barriers, and drive middle and high school students to an increased awareness of the skilled trades careers and working with veterans and other populations to increase labor market participation. So today's event falls directly within our pillars of work. And through a partnership with the KC Chamber's Military Affairs Committee, our hope is that the industry comes to a better understanding of the why and the how-to when it comes to accessing the veteran talent pool. The KC Chamber's Military and Veteran Affairs Committee, or as we call it, MAC, is committed to setting out a national standard for civil military relationships and developing a network of high-quality employees transitioning from military to civilian service. The Chamber's MAC is working to better connect business and the military for the purpose of military recognition, veteran job placement, and advocacy to strengthen our military interests. Members of MAC are businesses and organizations actively engaged in advancing the region's military assets and supporting the job placement of transitioning services members and their spouses. MAC regularly supports hiring events, job fairs, transitional service programs, and connects businesses and community members to military and veteran resources. So understanding talent sources is imperative when it comes to continued growth in the Kansas City region. The latest available data portrays a number of jobs that continue to remain unfilled in the metro. Currently, there are roughly 98,000 job openings in the Kansas City area. Unemployment rates are at 3.3%, and our 12-month employment growth grew by almost 2%. However, that growth remains relatively low when you compare it with our peer cities. We are, however, seeing some stronger recovery in industries that were severely affected by COVID-19, such as leisure and hospitality. Construction and information services also saw some of the highest gains over the past year. Overall, though, the continued theme we continue to hear from our members is that we need more talent in the region to help fill vacancies. So to help address these needs, it's imperative that we attract top talent to our region. And one of the strongest workforce resources we have plenty of in Kansas and Missouri are outstanding service members. The KC region has a rich military history. Fort Leavenworth, known as the intellectual center of the Army, has been in operation since 1882. Whiteman Air Force Base is home to the B-2 stealth bomber. Fort Leonard Wood provides educational training for a broad spectrum of engineering specialties across Army branches. Fort Riley's home to the Big Red One, and McConnell Air Force Base hosts Air Mobility Command's 22nd Air Refueling Wing. KCU's veteran workforce offers businesses the ability to attract thousands of highly skilled workers separating from significant military installations within the region. The number of available talent from the armed forces presents tremendous opportunity. The discharge numbers from area bases roughly total around 6,500, with around 600 from Fort Leavenworth, 1,600 from Fort Leonard Wood, 3,300 from Fort Riley, 500 from McConnell, and 480 from Whiteman. These service members being discharged represent talent opportunities for a wide range of skill sets that could have an immediate impact on the region's economy. And that's not even accounting for the effect that, when they bring their spouses and children, when they come with the relocating veterans into our workforce, which adds an even more increased benefit. The region has an opportunity to meet its workforce needs and attract and retain high-level talent by accessing the veteran talent pool. It's through this workshop that we hope you come away with a better understanding of recruiting and working with veterans and resources that are available. Our goal is for the collective business community to learn, share, and collaborate to help develop the strongest workforce that we can. I'd now like to introduce our Director of Public Policy here at the Chamber, Adam Timmerman, who will lead us into the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I really appreciate that and all the great information he provided there. And then allowing our Military Affairs Committee to use his workforce development as a kind of matrix to address the workforce hiring issues and how veterans can help serve those needs. So at this time, I'd like to call the rest of our panel up to the front, Jason and Sean, and to join Gary and Emma here. And then we'll get started right away here. So. Perfect. And so before you have a panel of, 4 diverse experiences with veteran hiring. And so to kind of ease them into the panel, make it easy. First question, we'll just go right down the line and do a quick introduction of who they are, who they're with, and what role do they serve in the military hiring community. So Jason, we'll start with you.
Good morning. My name is Jason Parson. I have a small business located in the historic Jazz District, Parson and Associates. We are a communications firm. We lead pretty much every major public project in Kansas City, from the airport to the streetcar, go down the list of any major public project we've had a role. Going on 15 years in business. I'm actually a disabled veteran. I served in the Army Reserves and Air Force Reserves. I'm happy to be here today and support my fellow veterans.
Good morning, I'm Gary Kerr. I'm the Senior Director for Military Veterans Affairs at Park University. So a year ago, I retired from the Army after 23 and a half years, came on board at Park in last March, and really focusing on how to grow our student population and serve veterans. So our campuses, we have 41 campuses across the nation. Last year, we served 8,300 military affiliated students. Of those students, about 5,000 of them were active duty, and about 2,300 veterans, and then spouses and dependent children account for the rest of them. So as I came on in the job, I was given the freedom to kind of figure out what we needed to do to help provide services to our students. And in that, I came up with my own challenges and thinking through how my transition or transformation, as I'm trying to call it nowadays, because it is really a transformation from being in the military into the civilian culture. But I thought about some of the challenges that I had and the struggles I had with finding a job, with translating my skills, with figuring out how do I enter into this strange world that I've never operated in. And there's a lot of difficulties that our veterans struggle going through those processes. And I see a lot of heads nodding because there's a lot of veterans out there in the audience right now. So I really kind of focused on trying to figure out how to help support veterans in their transformation into the civilian world, as well as how to partner with corporations to educate them about the intrinsic value of having veterans serve in their organizations. So I'm just looking forward to answering some questions and helping out.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Emma Toops. I am an entrepreneur. My business is Toops Consulting, which is a business I do with my husband, David. I represent several organizations in the community in this military support space. My business is David and I are freelance educators. So we're contract teachers, coaches, or consultants based on who our audience is. And our focus is in supporting people who are in transition, life, school, career, or business. I certainly have affinity to the military transition because I am a veteran. I'm a retired major. I kind of fell into the RIF as far as my intention to retire as a lieutenant colonel. But the reduction in force kind of, reduced opportunities for me. And so transition for me was unexpected. I thought I had 2.5 more years, and my experience is part of my passion and drive for the work that I do. A couple other organizations that I represent in the community is the immediate past president of Kansas City AUSA, which is the Association of the United States Army. It's an educational nonprofit, and I was the VP of programs prior to being the chapter president for 2 terms, which was a total of 5 years chapter leadership. I'm still on the executive committee as the director of community partners, and my company is one of the chapter's community partners. The chapter is a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and so that is how I am represented in the Military Affairs Committee as the Community Partners Director. And a business club that I am a member of, it's a private business club called the ACA Business Club. There's special interest groups within the club that are effectively affinity groups or clubs within the club. There's an interest group called American Warriors, and I am the executive chair for it.
My name is Sean Geib. I'm transitioned just like the rest of the panel here out of the Marine Corps. When I transitioned out of the Marine Corps, I started working for Honeywell FM&T, kind of worked my way up. I'm currently the security director at Honeywell FM&T. I also sit on the Veterans Committee there. I'm the executive sponsor for the organization. And then, just like the rest of the panel here, trying to give back to veterans, trying to support opening opportunities for them. Like they mentioned, when you get out of the military, it's hard to transition some of your skills to what it looks like on a corporate resume. And so the challenge that we faced, at least at Honeywell, was a lot of the hiring managers didn't understand the value, right? And so what we did with and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but with the Veterans Committee is tried to help train and make them understand how that works for them, right? One of the things I do for the community, Andrew, with the Military Affairs Committee, I sit there, I'm on the co-chair there, and we support, from a Honeywell perspective, anywhere we can to support veterans. Honeywell is at least self-identified 14% veterans. So that's a huge benefit for us. I know we have more than 14%, but that's just what we have self-identified. So happy to be here.
Perfect. Thank you all. Really appreciate you being here. So audience disclaimer, I've had the pleasure of talking to these 4 already. So I know a little bit about what they're going to say in this conversation. So I'm cheating a little bit, but I think we wanted to frame this discussion into 3 key aspects. One is why you should hire a veteran. What's the type of investment you can get out of hiring a veteran? Then the second one is how to hire a veteran. What can you do? What are some resources and programs in making your places of employment attractive to a veteran? And then how you can maintain a veteran workforce, retaining them, making sure they don't leave after a year, and making sure your workplace is as veteran inclusive as possible. So we'll go back and start with the first one, and I'll start. Anyone can jump in on this one. Why should a business be encouraged or look into it using the veteran workforce to address workforce needs? What is it that a veteran brings? What are some of those intangibles? And remember, we are on a time limit. We don't have all day because I know all of you guys can talk all day on this. But why should a business look at a veteran to address a workforce need?
And go down the line though on every question. So let's get that out the way right now. But what I will say is when we think about our veterans and the skill sets that they bring, I think they match up very well with pretty much any employer. You talk about the discipline, you talk about the attention to detail. All those are things that when we think about having a good employee, you want those attributes in folks. And so when I think about hiring a veteran, I think about someone that's able to multitask. You know, in the military, very rarely are you able just to focus on one job. And so you're always learning, you're always growing, and you're always sort of pushed. And so, you know, in the workforce, you know, I don't have anything against, you know, folks that are not veterans, but it just seems like our base as veterans for what we've been through and what we prepared for and what we trained for has equipped us to be able to transition to most employment opportunities to do well.
I'd like to add that if you look at the various talent pools available, the understanding of the caliber of talent that you're going to get as far as the intangibles, there's a common understanding for what you're going to get for a service person, because the environment of that work it's dynamic. You have to be paying attention. You have to be disciplined. You have to have drive. You have to believe in the purpose. You have all these things that are skills and abilities, but they're soft skills and abilities. They're inherent to the person. They're not necessarily trained. They are conditioned. As far as when they first come in, they have to learn what those expectations are, but that does not take very long before they're on to the job. And so understanding that that is just inherent, it's a baseline characteristic that you can expect from military talent. Then you can look at the skills and abilities that are the hard skills, the technical skills, the things as far as how are they going to engage with other people to do the work. And because of the environment of the military being encouraging, empowering, it's very positive as far as the people. The nature of the business, maybe not positive all the time, but the people are. The people are, and they're engaged, and they want to ensure that the mission doesn't fail, and you can depend on that. So I think that if you look at the fact that everybody in the service who has made it past a certain number of years, the system will process you out if you do not meet those minimum requirements. Or those who don't want to live up to them personally decide to get out on their own. Okay. They're teachable and they're wanting to contribute to whatever your purpose is if they believe in it.
So I think I'm not going to say anything new that everybody says there, but I take me, for example, when I joined the Marine Corps, at 18, they put you in charge of millions of dollars of equipment and other people's lives. And so you have to grow up really quickly. And so a lot of the things that they said there with the soft skills that you learn when you come out, you have a better understanding, and you look at your peers that are probably in the same boat that went to college or whatever, and you're just head and shoulders a little bit above that. And a lot of the things that they bring, you know, for us from a Honeywell standpoint, we have a mission to support the government. And so continuing that mission from whatever they did before and bringing it to there, they are able to bring large groups of people to a common understanding and to a goal, and to be able to accomplish that task. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things you can get out of it. Definitely the technical side of it. You know, if you were in the military, you get to train on the best equipment that's out there, where if you go to college, not that it's a bad thing, you get to get the knowledge, but you don't always get the experience, right? So coming out of the military, you got the knowledge and the experience. And so it's already there. And then again, to the what Nima said, the common understanding and knowing where we're going. So I think the possibilities are endless.
So I know you're ready. You're like, I'm moving on, but we all are going to speak because we've got great things to say, I think, maybe. But anyway, so one of the other things that adds to that is we are the only institution that I know of that formally trains people in leadership. That's what we do. Every 3 to 4 years, you're training in leader. You're coming out of whatever you're doing. You're going to school. We're training you to be the next level leader. Corporate America doesn't do that I know of, at least. So that model means that when that service member is ready to leave, they've already got years of formal, directed leadership training, not management training. So within corporate America, what I'm learning, at least, is we promote managers because they do really good jobs. but we never teach them to lead people. The military will teach you to lead people formally. And that's a huge advantage.
So kind of going off of some of the comments made, Emma and Sean specifically, Sean, you said Honeywell has a huge chunk of its workforce veteran. What are some of those returns by hiring veterans in those roles? Is it more of, is it empirical, data driven returns, or is it kind of what Emma touched on, is that you're getting these positive workers that overall uplift the workplace?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? We go back to the mission, what we do at Honeywell, and getting those folks to continue the mission. Obviously, we support largely the Air Force and the Navy, right? And a lot of those skills transfer over, but it is that, being able to uplift and bring the team along, right? A lot of times in work, we're all overwhelmed, right? And we have to knuckle down and accomplish the mission. And a lot of those folks are, hey, we're here, we're going to continue that mission, and we're going to continue to go. We do get other benefits, right? I mean, based off of what the work we do, we have to hold a security clearance. So that the talent we get from the military has a large security clearance population, and it's easy to transfer that skill, right? Instead of going and looking for people that may not be able to meet those requirements. But the biggest piece of it is the skills that they bring to us and help, drive our mission.
And then I'm going to flip this a little bit on the small business side. Jason, again, kind of same question. What can the veteran bring to a small business? Is it a positive attitude? Is it the hard working that otherwise gets missed by not hiring a veteran, or what's the role there?
Well, for one, in a small business, oftentimes we all have to wear many hats. And so, when we hire, it's not necessarily talked about the education or anything. I've never hired once based on who I think is the smartest or has the most experience. My driver is, how well do you work with people? And one of the things about the military is you have to work with people, and not just people, a diverse group of people, sort of like the stage, right? Like, we're all a bit different, but we reflect the military. And so as a small business, having those skill sets to work with people, being able to do multi-jobs, multitask, work under pressure. That's another big thing for a small business. Military, you're always under pressure. So those are key things that I look for in hiring employees to make a small business successful.
I think, Gary, I'm going to turn it to you.
So something So I spent the last 4.5 years of my career training cadets. And what we really focused on was allowing them to solve complex problems in resource-constrained environments. I think that directly translates to any corporation. If you're a small business, you've got constraints on the resources. You've got limited money, and they're able to make do with what they've got and figure it out. I wrote a whole paper on figuring it out, right? They used to come to me with problems. I said, I don't know, go figure it out. We allow them to grow by doing that. But here's what you've got. This is all you have. Our budget is constrained right now. Figure it out. How are we going to make it work? And they'll do that. So they're comfortable with that.
I'll add that the work that I do, I have a paradigm for thinking for when I'm working with someone who's in transition. There's areas along this process of transition that people can get stuck. And it really boils down to understanding who you are and how you can apply your abilities, your skill sets, the resources you have access to, having a driving purpose to achieve an outcome within an environment that you show up in. And in that environment are other people, there's other resources. Are you availing those things within the environment to support the outcome within the rules and expectations of that environment? And for military talent, sometimes the help that they need is recognizing that they're in a new environment. They're in a new environment, but their application of self to achieve an outcome that they believe in is what propels them to the next thing, because those people in the environment, it's learning the rules, which is they're teachable, right? They're energetic and want to contribute. Provided an opportunity, they can understand what the rules and expectations are, and the people that they're around afford them access and step them closer to the result or the opportunity that they're seeking. So I think the resourcefulness is a huge, unquantifiable value, depending on how you, decide it is worth to your company, to your organization.
Perfect. Oh, go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to add one thing because Emma made me think about it, is that in the situations that you're put in the military, especially recent times with combat and war, you're under that pressure and you have to make those decisions, right? And I think as we talk about inclusion and diversity and all those types of things, I think the military is the largest diverse and inclusive organization out there because you're thrown into that pot of people that you have to try to figure out and come to that common goal and work for. And so when you come over to the corporate environment, I think the only thing we have to switch is, okay, there's HR now, where in the military, there's not that. And you have to kind of change your mindset a little bit because there's things that you cannot do, that you could do before, right? And it's not a negative thing. It's just, hey, go figure this out and go and make it happen, right? And so sometimes there's some corporate policies that restrain us from that. But I mean, overall, I think that, bringing that diversity and inclusion and all that type of stuff into the business, they're already ready to go. And we've short-circuited it instead of trying to, build them up to that. So.
Perfect. Before we put a pin in the why, I'm going to ask each of you the same question. 1 to 2 word answers. You've all mentioned it. What's the most important tangible skill you think a veteran brings to the workforce? And we'll start with Sean first, since we started with Jason last time.
I would say if I had to pick one, it would be leadership.
Yeah. Emma.
Well, I won't say that because that's what I was going to say. I think teachable.
Because it's what we do. But diversity is a good one as well. We know how to operate in that.
Focused.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So kind of moving on to the next part, we've kind of got a understanding on why we should hire veterans, but as an employer, you may be wondering, how can I get into the veteran workforce? What should I know? What do I need? What are the resources available, or what do I need to know when trying to attract veteran talent? So I think opening it back up to the group again, we'll start broad and then we'll start narrowing in this discussion. What is the first thing an employer should know if they're going to start tapping into the veteran workforce? What do they need to know? And then again, we'll narrow it down to talk about job descriptions and roles and transitioning and matching skills to jobs. But what's the first step? What do they need to know?
Okay. The first thing you need to understand is this is an audience. And if you are a speaker, if you're a teacher, you're a leader, you need to understand your audience because you need to be able to connect with them to where they understand what you're saying and they believe you, right? So if you are a recruiter, you have a strategic vision for your company to be military inclusive, military friendly, military ready, you need to understand your audience. So they live and work and play in this environment of the military and the military community. And if you don't understand some of the language, if you don't understand their mindsets for what is the normal, what is the expectation for how to show up in all of those various things, then you literally are like entering into a foreign country as a tourist and you don't understand what's going on with the people. So in order to be able to connect to them, persuade them of the value of contributing to your team and your opportunity, you need to be able to connect with them and kind of understand a little bit about who they are and where they're coming from, because they don't talk like you, they don't think like you, and they don't necessarily know what all your culture and systems are until you introduce them to it. And they're doing research on their own. The ones who are getting ready to get out, they're doing research on their own because they recognize that they're going into a foreign culture or whatnot. So it's reciprocity to the transition line. If you want to be intentional about it, you really kind of need to know some basics about who you're approaching in the talent pool.
So I think there's a lot of resources out there. There's 40,000 veteran service organizations out there. Of the 40,000, I don't know, there's probably 5 to 10,000 of those are hiring organizations. Some of them are small, some of them are big, like Hire Our Heroes or Vets to Industry. So if you're a corporation and you're looking for veterans, start there. Figure out who's in the space that has that is supporting the veteran community through hiring jobs. And then the other side of it, and this touches on a little bit of what Emma's saying, is the culture. So you got to understand a little bit about the culture, but and this is where I'm kind of struggling a little bit is the military doesn't do a good job of teaching our service members about the civilian culture. And I think that's where our friction point is. Like, I don't understand that HR does training. It took me 6 months after retirement that, hey, I'm an ops guy. I do training. Like, do I fall under the chief of operations? No, you fall under HR. We don't understand that. I was in the Army for 23 and a half years as a lieutenant colonel. Like, I didn't understand that. And part of it is because we don't really want to, because we're really comfortable in our own culture. So if you want to capture those folks, you've got to go to those organizations that are providing them services to be hired, partner with them, and then begin to help the service member translate their own skills. But you, as your HR folks, have to kind of understand what their skills mean, because they're not going to do it very well. They're just not. I didn't do it very well.
John, any outreach strategies from the Honeywell perspective?
So I would say they're spot on. Learning the language. If you can't bring somebody from a veteran's perspective to the job fair or to wherever you're going, at least learn some of that language, because that's going to help break down some of those barriers and make them feel more comfortable to share. And just like it was mentioned with the resumes, we as a military organization do not do a great job of teaching folks that, hey, here's how you need to fill out a resume. It's getting better. You know, I know businesses like Honeywell are talking to the TAPS groups and that type of stuff and saying, hey, here's some things that you can do, and getting it plugged into those TAPS groups. So TAPS is that transitional assistance program that helps folks get out of the military and helps them write a resume and those types of things. And most military bases have a TAPS office that helps train those folks. But even when you're in the military and you're transitioning out, you're looking at that list of, I got to go to the TAPS office. You're like, I'll go and just get the check in the block, but you don't take the services. And so then you struggle trying to find those things. So one of the things that we've done, to your point, if I say with outreach, is our veterans group takes those resumes that of anybody that's out there and helps tweak it, right? And have that conversation. Even if they don't come work for Honeywell, we can at least show them, hey, here's what your resume should look like. Here's the key words that you should be pulling out of the job, you know, responsibilities and duties and putting in your resume, because they translate, right? You know, if you worked on a tank, trying to translate that to a civilian job is kind of difficult. And so I think if you can plug into some of those, if you have a veterans group at your organization to help for those folks, they're really helpful and they know where to go. They know who to talk to. They got friends that are getting ready to get out, right? So.
Yeah, Jason, small business.
The larger ones, but you know, I think when like for us, we work with a lot of organizations throughout the city doing different efforts, whether it's some nonprofit work or whatever, and you start to cultivate relationships and understanding. And it's not just about, I think, communicating like the jobs and stuff itself, but it's really understanding and meeting the veterans where they are. That's the one thing that I found is the challenges that many veterans face as some of them are transitioning to civilian life, and how do you have an environment that is supportive of those veterans so that they can thrive? And how do you communicate that as you are seeking, you know, to fill those opportunities at your company? And again, a small business is difficult because for us, I've never once hired via a career builder or anything else. All my hires have been through relationships. Every single last one of them are word of mouth, which makes it much more difficult for me. I'm not against any other ways of hiring, but since we're such an intimate bunch, I really go on, referrals and word of mouth, which narrows my pool to choose from. But I just think we have to be very careful and look when we hire veterans through truly a lens of opportunity, because what they bring and what we bring as veterans, I think, is real value to any company.
I like to add you got to meet them where they are. So they're going to be amongst other folks that they are familiar with, they're comfortable with, and are like them. So not getting involved in the military support community is a detriment if your objective is to hire military talent, because where are they going to be? They're going to be in the space that they're comfortable in. Now, those who are getting ready to transition, who are already out, they're easy to pick out because they're still in transition. So when you are in an environment where there's a mixed crowd, those who have already civilianized and aren't wearing anything to represent that they are service connected, affiliated, or familiar, they act and behave just like you. But the ones who are in transition, getting ready to get out or still serving, they're easy to pick out if you understand where they're coming from, because they look different, they act different, they stand different sometimes as far as just their posture and their attitude. And that's a really kind of vulnerable period for those people. But if you truly are military friendly, ready, and strategic in being able to connect to where they are, then you can find them because you recognize it before those who are not.
Perfect. I'm going to do a little bit of a curveball here, and we're going to call on two audience members quickly because we're talking about translating military service to the civilian world. And so we have one thing we do at the chamber and we excel at is highlighting members and highlighting what's going on in Kansas City. So we'll start with Zach. Zach, you want to just give a 30-second pitch of what you're doing, and then we'll go to Troy then after.
Sure. So just want to thank everyone for being here. Really quick, my name is Zachary Banjo. I'm an entrepreneur, and my organization is focused primarily on creating data-driven solutions for the military community. I have a number of years of experience in research and social work, and so we're trying to apply that to the community at large so that we can bridge the military community directly over to the civilian workforce. And we do that through a number of ways, and that's through the translation of soft skills, creating pathways to acquiring additional hard skills. But the main thing that we want to focus on is we want employers to recognize the talent source that's available, especially locally, and to widen their hiring funnel so that they can take advantage of that opportunity.
And we're getting the mic to Troy because Troy is doing something neat out at Fort Riley.
Hi, I'm Troy Carlson. I'm president and CEO of a company called Initiatives Incorporated. We do large strategic business development projects for organizations and have a pretty wide variety of clients. We got approached in September 20 by the president of the Junction City Area Chamber. They had a concept with an investor group on how can they leverage the military talent exiting Fort Riley. Fort Riley has about 20,000 soldiers. And within any given year, there's 3,600 to 4,100 soldiers in the TAP program. And more than half of those will exit the military. So how do they retain that talent, keep them here and put them into in-demand roles, not only in Junction City, but within the region? So we brought in a company called Astrum U, and Zach, probably some similarities to what you're doing. They do machine learning AI, founded by a gentleman from Kansas City. And they started their company working with college students to do predictive analytics for outcomes for when they graduate from a university. What's the best career path for them, where to go. And so they want to get in. They were approaching the military and doing the same type of concept for that cohort. They have a couple of rock stars on the team. One is retired Major General Chris Hughes, and another one is the recently retired Dean of the Command General Staff College, James Martin. And they are great consultants and advisors for us in what we're doing. So what we found is one of the biggest problems that soldiers have is when they go through, particularly if being career military, they are prescribed roles and they're told what to do. But when they go through the exit process of going into the civilian sector, the military tends to say, okay, here's all your options. Good luck. See ya. And so that they're thrown out, they have no clue on where they need to go and what they need to do. What Ask Review does is a very metrics driven process. So they look at not only the functional competencies of that soldier, but they look at their characteristics, their attributes, their values. And then on the supply side, we sign up corporations that we find out what their top in demand roles are and what their culture is, what their values are, what their attributes are of their top performers. And so we're matching them up with those roles. Since we started the program in January 1st of 21, we've signed up T-Mobile, Evergy, J.E. Dunn Construction, P1 Group. We've got several others lined up. We just signed up a major one that I can't announce because they're working with their PR team to do the announcement. But essentially what we're doing is matching up in a very prescriptive way for these soldiers, because we can actually say, okay, while you're going through your TAP program, you have an 84% probability of being highly successful in X career. Could be cybersecurity, could be IT, could be mechanics, advanced manufacturing. But also while you're going through that, the military will pay for your upskilling to match this particular role that you're a good fit for within X company. And so we are well on our way. We're expanding this nationally, but Junction City, Fort Riley is the beta site. So it's going to have we feel it's going to have a pretty big impact on the workforce here in Kansas City.
Perfect. Thanks, Troy. And thank you, Zach. So the reason I bring that up, and as the panel has mentioned, there's a lot of programs out there, and we'll hear about them after the panel as well, of tools employers can tap into to hire veterans. But Emma, in some of our previous conversations, you brought up that sometimes employers don't write the best job description, or they're not looking for they're not recruiting the veteran to the role that may be best for the veteran. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yes. So something that's interesting is, folks who are in human resources, they are responsible for all the legal guidance, all the how do you do things and whatnot when it comes to people. And the job vacancy announcement is literally the description for what the work is supposed to be. And if it is too vague, it's not really zeroing in on the work that they're going to do. It's focused on a lot of things that are intangible. The service person can connect to all those things. But then if the work isn't described as far as what they're actually going to do, if 2/3 of the announcement is all of these things that there's like, yep, I'm that, because it's intangible. And it's, discipline and working with people, they're all about that. They self-identify as being qualified for the job, but there's maybe 2 or 3 lines in the job description that actually describes the technical work. And that's tied to the standards and expectations for performance and behavior. And so there's potential for there to be a over self-confidence of their candidacy for a particular role, because there's not enough information in there that really talks to the work that they're going to be doing other than working with people. So language.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to jump in. Troy triggered a lot of stuff, and I'm working with Zach and some of the things that you've said. So one of the things that a corporation can do, or a small company or big company, is figure out where veterans are being trained. So we're partnered with Ace from You as well at Park, and in using their AI to help figure out what degree program they should enter into. But along that way, we're trying to, just like Troy, partner with corporations. So you're within academia, you have institutions that are partnering with corporations to help partner the veteran with the corporation along their path to becoming a person in a career while they're in the education institution. So we use an AI, it translates some of the skills. We have relationships with the corporate organization. And this is a lot of institutions. It's not just Park University, but and then along the way, we're tapping into, hey, we need mentors. We're going to go to that corporation and say, I've got 3 candidates within these fields. Will you talk to them? And then we need internships. So along the path, hey, I've got 10 interns for you for Bank of America or wherever. And then we've got the career partnership. So there are matchmakers out there. So figure out who your matchmaker is going to be. And that matchmaker is going to take on the task of helping translate the skills and get them into a job.
Well, thank you all. And I apologize. I'm doing a horrible job of keeping time. So we're going to put a pin on this discussion, and again, we'll circle back on resources available at the end. But just moving on quickly to the final part. So let's say a company has gone through all these programs. They've hired a veteran. What can they do to keep a veteran? And I know some of you have talked about there's a really high, there's a really low retention rate for veterans in their first job. So what are some items veterans can or employers can do to keep a veteran once they've hired them?
I think Gary mentioned it earlier as far as his not understanding that training is not operations, training is HR. That is something that, because of our conditioned understanding of continuing personal and professional growth, affording mentorship, coaching, even unasked, to progress in your success, and being afforded opportunities to actually go to formal military education, or even assignments that we in the military call, growth opportunities. That expectation of continuing to move forward in your abilities, in your skill set, and your capabilities, that's expected. That's an expectation of a service person. And because operations doesn't include it anymore, that's a big disconnect as far as what they're expecting when they go into an opportunity where the employer doesn't afford those type of growth opportunities. And it's like, well, what? And so there's a little bit of disengagement because of the lack of growth potential. And I think that we also need to coach service people that when they're looking into the culture and the expectations for how to show up and perform for a particular company, they need to look at that there are growth potential, or they ask those questions as far, is there a path of success in your opportunities available? Because it's a shortfall in expectations a lot of the time that creates the disengagement.
So I would agree with that. And I think it's an education on both sides. When you join the military, about every 3 years, you're moved or you change jobs, right? And so when you get a military member, you got to keep engaged, keep developing, because after that, about 3 years, they start getting that itch of, where do I go next? What's my next job, right? Because they feel like they've fixed everything here and, hey, I got to go to the next thing. And so keeping them engaged, I think, is a big thing. But like Emma said, it's training both of them, the veterans and the employer, because the veteran needs to understand that when you get in a corporate environment, sometimes every 3 years is not the pace of movement, right?
So it's 18-month mark is when, I forget what the percentage is, 40% of veterans leave their first job. And
It's higher than that.
It's higher than that.
Actually, I've been in the military support space for a long time. I retired in 2013, but statistically, and it might have changed a little bit, is unfortunately, it's closer to 80%, and the window is about 2.5, 3 years. Within 2.5 to 3 years, 80% of service people have moved on to the next opportunity after their first one.
So I think if you want to keep them and I'm going through this right now, don't tell my boss, right? Because I'm thinking through it. I'm like, I've got a lot of skills and I think veterans don't feel like they're being challenged in their work. And in order to be satisfied in our work, we've got to be challenged. And this is going to sound terrible, but if you're going to be veteran inclusive as a corporation, you need to recognize that if you've got someone that just transitioned, maybe you start mentoring them a little bit and figure out, are they happy? And if not, what can I put on their plate to give them more, to challenge them more? Because corporations are underestimating what we bring to the table when we show up. It's just inherent, whether you're a veteran inclusive one or a corporation or not. But they show up and there's not that understanding on both sides of these are the skills you bring and these are the skills we need and what we want. And then at some point they've got to figure out, hey, I need to give this person more responsibility. This person excels in this. And if you don't do that, they're going to go find it somewhere else.
Jason.
After three wonderful answers, it really sums it up. But I will say that when we talk about what are the rules of engagement, it goes both ways. So for me as a small business owner, as much as we talk about employees wanting to be challenged and our just drivers and things like that, I have to be careful as the owner of my company, because what I realize, especially with some young employees, how impressionable they are. And what I mean by that is this. When I think about, you just nailed it, when I think about my workload, I don't take things off of my plate. I go, 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 go. And what I found, though, is that's not always a healthy environment. And that's not always the best, especially with young, impressionable employees, because what I end up seeing is that they want to go. And when opportunities would come up, they would always say, yes, I could do more. Yes, I could do more. And I started to think, no, you can't, right? Like, no, you can't do more. You need to do what's on your plate. But I'm wired that I will go until I'm just physically exhausted where I can't do any more work. And so I really struggle in my company of maintaining that balance of making sure, because everybody's not wired like that, right? Like, especially young people. I think the blessing of this pandemic for me is it really brought home the work-life balance. For so long, I would fall asleep with a laptop, on the bed just because, just working. And now you realize it's not healthy, right? Like, you got to figure out when to shut it down, and you got to figure out, certainly when to push your employees, but also when to pull them back. And in the military, again, it's just hard to do because you're always conditioned that you can go, you can do more, and that's a very delicate balance that you really need to be mindful of with staff and employees.
Perfect. Thank you all. So we have time for a couple quick questions if anyone has any. Or was our panel so good that all your questions have been answered? I didn't even plan any questions. So here we go.
So I'm curious, we talked a lot about when they're transitioning out of the military, but what about those who have been out of the military for a long time? Because we're trying to work with like the homeless veterans to see how can we bring them to our company? How can we get them there? What jobs would be good for them? So what are your suggestions for that?
I think it ties back to my transition puzzle paradigm that there's 5 components to it. And there's the picture, the outcome, the result, but then there's a frame around it where 2 of those edges are focused on the person, who they are and what they believe in and what drives them. It's the environment piece, the other 2 edges of the frame, the environment and the routines. And that's usually where people get really, really stuck, fail or falter, is acknowledging how do you show up in a particular environment to the expectations of the people and the resources available. And I think for those who are kind of stuck, it's because they never left the environment of where they're coming from to show up in a new environment that they now actually live in. And I say this all the time when I'm doing training and when I'm talking to people who are a little bit stuck. It's like life doesn't happen in your head. It happens when you show up and actions take place where you're applying resources. And those resources can be of your own, or they can be of other people, other people's knowledge, other people's resources and money and influence. I mean, it doesn't even have to be your influence. It could be other people's influence. But all of those things are necessary in order to get on to whatever that next thing is. And I think that's part of the challenge of folks who've been out for a while and still really kind of haven't found their next thing because they haven't found it in the space that they're in. They needed to be a little bit more objective to how do you show up and what is your identity and how it fits into the space that you now are in.
That is, I think your network is important. I see a good friend of mine, Cisneros. We go back, I won't say how many years. You're a little old now, Cisneros, right? Like, I froze in time, but you kept aging. But no, I do think it is very important. What I found is to have those conversations. So I'll give you for example. When I got back, I was a part of the invasion in 2003 in Iraq. When I got back from war, one of the guys that was over in Iraq with me said, Jason, have you went to the VA to talk about, and get services and this and that? And I was like, nah, I don't need to go to the VA and all that. But he's like, no, you really should go, right? Like there are things that you should go to the VA and go. And long story short, I went, right? And it was an eye-opening experiences. And the only reason why I say that again, it's the network, right? The fellow veterans that may say, hey, I know you got these certain type of skill sets, or I know an employer that'd be a good match for you, or just simply supports as you try to figure out, what is this that I want to do and what's a good match for you? And so, that veteran community, I think, is a very, very supportive community, and one in which that understands the challenges that we all face and hopefully would help nurture you and be there for you as you try to figure out what fits for you and what area you can thrive.
The work that's spot on. And I'm not trying to reinforce, I'm trying to expand just a little bit, but look at the veteran service organizations. I see Michelle back there from BCP. Like you want to help. She has a handful of folks that might be able to connect you to folks that can find you veterans that are trying to get up and bring themselves up into a new community and bring themselves up. So it's figure out which are your go-to service organizations, your veteran service organizations, because they're doing amazing work. It's just, you've got to filter through 40,000 of them to figure out which are going to be your go-to ones.
Yep. And then, as you said, Gary, Michelle from Veterans Community Project is here. They're doing great work with the homeless veteran population and providing housing and resources to them. She'll be here. You can talk to her afterwards and connect. And I believe all four of you will be hanging out around a little bit too afterwards. So if you want to connect with them. Brooke, I know you have a question. We'll end on your question and then we'll go to our next part. So Brooke, you want to go?
I'm Brooke with the Veterans of Foreign Wars Foundation. First, I want to thank you for your sacrifice and for your service. And I say sacrifice because it takes a team with your family that have sacrificed. So my question is twofold. One, for the spouses and hiring initiatives for the spouses. And then two, how you still serve in your community.
Take the second question. We serve two ways. One, I started a nonprofit many years back. People in the military would get this right away. It's called Project MRE. And what we do, MRE stands for Meals Ready to Eat. And to date, we've given away over 1,000 meals. So every year, we feed hundreds of vets, whether they're homeless or sick and shut in. And not only do we feed them, but one of the biggest needs in any homeless shelter that most people don't realize are socks. And so when we deliver meals twice a year, we also have a drive where we collect socks throughout the city. We also get, coats in the winter, toothbrushes, toothpastes. So we put together a package that we deliver veterans all over the metro area. And mainly it's just my company that does it. There are some companies here that have supported, but we really never sought funding just because I've always been afraid that you get too much money, then that becomes another job. And so we've just been very fortunate. The other thing that I do, I sit on the board of Spencer C. Duncan. I don't know how many of you all know about Spencer C. Duncan, but in the military, we say all give some, but some give all. And in that particular case, that's exactly what happened. And so it's just very tough sometimes, when we deal with giving back, because it's real.
So I think the one thing in common all four of us have is we're working for organizations, but we're in subgroups of those organizations to support directly to veterans. So I'm lucky enough to support 8,300 military affiliated students every year. And that's an amazing thing. And as I try to figure out how am I really helping them, I'm the network, and I'm trying to connect organizations, corporations, individuals, my institution, other institutions to help. And I don't care what school it is, I'll help. If a student comes to me and says, hey, I want to do X, Y, or Z, we're going to be, okay, well, we don't do that, but WGU can help you out, or UMKC can help you out. So it's building the community, making the community very strong so that we amongst the network can help our veterans and service members out. And it's the same when I say veteran, I think spouses as well. They are the veteran. My wife put up with way more than I ever did. I was gone for 4 years in combat, and like, I don't know how she managed any of that. So we all have a soft spot for our spouses, our significant others. And it's that network is strong. The spouses network is strong, whether it's the Military Spouses Employment Program, which is a federally funded program where you can get a corporation to partner with them. So it's us making those connections, us strengthening the community, and us advocating for the individuals.
I'll answer both of your questions. So my husband was the mil spouse in my household because I was the service member. And so at that time, it's pretty unconventional. And a lot of people assume we're dual military because that's what people assume. But it's a different environment today, partially because now we do have a lot more male spouses because of Don't Ask, Don't Tell has been removed as a policy. But back when I served, being a mil spouse and not being woman was very challenging. And David's skill set, his professional skill set is IT. And so IT is a very fast moving industry. So those gaps in employment really were consequential as far as how attractive of a candidate was he to those who didn't understand that he was a mil spouse. Okay, so just like with understanding where the talent is coming from, getting some empathy and understanding of their culture, their language, and whatnot, the same thing is true for military spouses. They are within the environment of support of their service person, and the culture that they live in, play in, and all of that is still the same environment as that service person. So just understanding your audience is a big part of being able to connect to the mil spouse, same as with the service person. The story, I won't share it here, but part of the reason why David and I started our business was because of challenges he was having in connecting to an opportunity after I got out, because neither one of us was prepared. The idea was that he would set some roots 2.5, 3 years before I retired, and then it would be smooth, it'd be easy. Well, didn't work out that way. So the other question that you asked was, how do we continue to stay involved and support? I do a lot of nonprofit work. KCAUSA is an educational nonprofit. I'm still part of the leadership team. In my new role as the director of community partners, a lot of it is really to support those companies who are wanting to be more military understanding, military friendly, being involved and engaged with, there's this whole community that I don't understand. It's like, well, let me introduce you to them. So there's still a big part of what I do that is a nonprofit. And the business club is a private club, but all of the interest groups are just affinity groups. So I, as the executive chair of American Warriors within the ACA Business Club, there are programs that I do routinely. There's actually one today. So the fourth Thursday of every month, I facilitate a discussion roundtable. And the people who attend is a topic of the day. And we just talk about, what does this word mean to you? What does this phrase or concept mean to you? Because it means different things depending on where you are in your mindset. So if you want to come, it's later this afternoon, or you can attend it virtual via Zoom. But the topic of the day is branding. Business professionals will have a different idea of that than a service person. So that's how I keep involved in it. And there's a guest speaker program that I organize twice a year where I invite 5 veterans to share their story. And they don't have to have been a tragic or heroic story. Everybody who's ever served has a transition story. And they don't necessarily get to share it because no one's asking. So I do that every 6 months.
So I'll just add, when we talk about the spouse portion, they're the hardest working ones out of the whole thing, right? They have to keep the family together. They have to keep everything together. A lot of the organizations we see now, like Hiring Our Heroes, are focusing on that and saying, hey, if we can get the spouse, then it's like a twofer, right? As we start talking about how folks get out of the military, most people, when they get out of the military, they're not from that area, right? So they're going to move back to somewhere else. And so that spouse has probably rooted themselves in local Missouri or whatever. And now we're going to move them again, right? And so if we can say, hey, you know what, your skills transfer to our employment agency as well, then we can bring them on or help them figure out a path forward. For me, most of the work outside of what I do is in support of Honeywell, and only because Honeywell, I'm able to get more resources, more money to help support that, right? So I do sit on the Military Affairs Committee and try to support those initiatives. But we also, as an organization, are trying to give back as much as possible to the community. And so being able to do that, we have a veterans committee that's, largely 14% of our population that's willing to go out there and support these initiatives through either VCP, Camp Valor, Warriors Ascent, all of these support organizations, Folds of Honor. We're out there trying to support those because they already have a great mission. And if we can be those hands and be out there to help, that's where we try to push as much as we can.
Perfect. Thank you all. Brooke, thank you for the question. And just a quick plug for Brooke. She's with the VFW Foundation, and they're doing an event on April 12th at the World War I Museum at 8 a.m. They're partnering with the Biz Journal for another very similar discussion on this. So you can get a double dose of veteran hiring, why it's important, what resources are available. So April 12th, World War I Museum at 8 a.m. So look for that as well. So Brooke, I got that right? Perfect. Thank you. And you can follow up with Brooke after for more information there. Panel, thank you all so much. They're all going to be sticking around if you have more questions after this. And like I said, we do have Michelle here with VCP. We have Zach with Vet Intelligence, and then what Troy's doing with AstroMu. So connect with them, learn about resources. But to wrap up the event, we do have Brett Rosine from Fort Leavenworth joining us. He's going to be talking about some specific programs that they offer up at the fort that your employers can tap into to start accessing this talent pool. So Brett, I'll hand you the mic and let you bring us home.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll try to keep this brief. I'm Brett Rosine. I'm the Adjutant General at Fort Leavenworth, which is a title that doesn't mean like it sounds. I run the Military Personnel Division at Fort Leavenworth, which includes the Transition Assistance Program. Before this position, I was the Transition Manager for Fort Leavenworth for about 9 years. I want to give you a quick history of the Transition Program for Department of Defense. It is a Department of Defense program. It's not just Army. It is congressionally mandated, and it first went into effect in 1991. It was supposed to happen in 90. We had a little thing called Desert Storm that came along and kind of delayed that. And they did it because it was the right thing to do. But the program has been enhanced a lot since then. In 91, it was rolled out, stayed the same for 20 years. But in the 2000s, something unusual started to happen. Most people don't realize that Department of Defense does not pay unemployment insurance to any state. So if Brett gets out in Missouri or Kansas and I say, I can't find a job, I got to go on unemployment, the state will say, well, absolutely, veteran, here's your money. And then every quarter that state bills the Pentagon for that amount. Now, in the 90s, early 2000s, it wasn't a big deal. We're talking the Army alone was like 20 million, maybe 50 million for Department of Defense, all services together. But that started to balloon as the 2000s were going on. So by the time we got to 2009, 2010, the Pentagon was being billed $1.2 billion a year in unemployment compensation that was coming out of operational funds. That was unprojected expenditures that affected promotions, retention, recruitment, training, everything. The Army alone was over $500 million a year in unemployment compensation. So Congress said we have to do something. So the Veterans Opportunity to Work Act was rolled out in 2012. It was approved in 2011, rolled out in 2012, and it greatly enhanced what the Transition Assistance Program does. Before, you got a sample resume, you got offered some help, you went to an optional 3-day course, boom, they signed off on your form, you went on your way. Now it's mandated. You must go, every active duty service member who's been in the military for more than 180 days has to go through the program. It's 1 full week of training.
I can sing any note higher than you.
A lot of other little and how to interview and things of that nature. One of the best things that the military has done is they've developed what's called the Skill Bridge program. That's what DOD calls it. Army, and we got to do our own thing. We call it the Career Skills Program. And the Career Skills Program allows active duty service members within their last 6 months of service to intern, apprentice, or shadow with private industry. And they can do this for up to 5 months, sometimes a little bit more. So it gives the employer an opportunity to bring on this active duty service member and see how they perform in real world conditions, working in their office, demonstrating their capabilities for months before a job is even offered to them. It allows the active duty member to work with the company, because it's a two-way street. Is the company right for that soldier? Does the culture fit that soldier? And so they get an opportunity to work with an organization or maybe a field they thought about going into that isn't their primary field, but they get to taste what it's like to be a civilian for a few months. Everybody wins. The company, they get to see what type of performer they might get. The individual who's doing the internship, well, they get a chance to prove what way they can do, which when it comes time to salary negotiation, that might be a little bit of an advantage for them. But one of our career skills programs, as mentioned, is hiring our heroes as well. That falls under the umbrella of our career skills program. Now, the regular career skills program internship is very flexible. It could be as few as 30 days, as much as 5 months. Where hiring our heroes is very much more structured. It's a 12-week program. They actually match. They'll take a resume, send them out to employers. Employers that want to participate get to look at these resume books and say, I would like to interview this guy, and this guy. And then the individual gets to say, I see these companies, I would like to work for this company, or this company. And we try to match them up as best we can. It's incredible. Here in the Kansas City area, our average starting salary is about $96,000 a year for our military getting out. Generally, they're going into middle management jobs or positions where they're being groomed for upper management. But we've had some success stories. Our best success story was a staff sergeant actually out of Fort Riley that came to our Hiring Our Heroes program. He ended up working for Amazon, and his salary package with compensation came to $175,000 a year coming out of the military as a staff sergeant. You should have saw his eyes. They were like that big, but that was really a success story. Other ways, so the career skills program, Hiring Our Heroes, you can get a hold of the transition program at Fort Leavenworth. We actually have a counselor who only deals with career skills programs. They can discuss, how to get on board with that and how to get active duty members into it. Another thing we do is we hold career fairs quite often. Not lately. Our last one was November of 2019. Our next one is a week from Tuesday, the 6th of April, and there still are tables open. 5th of April. That's right. Thank you. You're going to be there. That's right. I got something else on the 6th. So Tuesday, the 5th of April, and there are tables open if you're interested in that. And if your company's looking to hire like Honeywell or some of the bigger ones that want to bring on a lot of people, we'll do a special event for you. We'll give you space, we'll advertise, and we'll let the soldiers know where and when you're going to be. And they just come in, and it costs you nothing other than the gas money to Fort Leavenworth, which might be a kind of significant, but go up there and we can set up an event tailored just to your needs. And there's a lot of other ways you can work with us too. We have panels during our TAP weeks where we bring in professionals from various industries to talk directly to our transitioning military on what their transition. We like to bring in former military who have succeeded in private industry and talk about what it takes to succeed or what to expect, what's the reality. And they talk about culture, they talk about language, they talk about your mannerisms. And so it's real enlightening for our transitioning military. And I would like to state that recently in the last 5 years or so, there's been a huge push to put spouses through the program as well. So every married service member is allowed, if they want, they can bring their spouse all the way through the program with them. Unfortunately, there aren't a lot of takers. We do have a program going on right now with senior command sergeants major, and we have 3 spouses in that one. But if there's any questions, I'm going to leave some cards. I'm actually going to leave the gentleman who took my position as the transition manager, Mr. Bob Jardin, and I'll leave his cards out here on the table. And just reach out to the program if you have questions, if you want to participate, if you want to do the career skills program, Hiring Our Heroes, anything, just reach out to us because we want you to join us so that we can get these transitioning military hired. Okay? Any questions? If there are, I'll be here.
Perfect. Thanks, Brett. And again, everybody, our folks are sticking around if you got to talk to them afterwards. But let's give it up for our panel. Let's give it up for Brett. All the information. And then he's going to give us just some parting words. So, words of wisdom.
I want to say thank you. Really appreciate everyone's time this morning, spending your morning with us. Just want to thank our presenting sponsors for the Workforce Development Initiative, Community American Credit Union, Evergy, HCA Midwest, and McCown Gordon, and our Military Affairs Committee sponsors, Honeywell and Waddell & Reed. Thank you all. Have a great day and enjoy your weekend.